All right, click the links to check out, subscribe to other various other links. So, Rings of Power. First of all, let me say I hope everyone in the show is eaten by dragons, small ones, so it takes a while. And second, diversity is cringe. I think more people just need to kind of be honest about a lot of this stuff, and you don't have to hem and haw over it and just go, oh, it's cringe. It's cringe. This is just cringy Hollywood Bolshevik propaganda. Why don't you guys just create something new instead of removing characters, from the stories that they themselves created, and then they'll call you istophobic, and you're like, yeah, but I'm attacking the idea. I'm attacking the concept. You're attacking the person. That's what ad hominem is all about. If you really want to put this kind of cultural Marxist propaganda in stories, why don't you just write something new? And they go, oh, well, I mean, if they're answering honestly, they'd be like, because no one would watch it. If we wrote some fantasy ElfQuest type of story, like, just a Lord of the Rings kind of ripoff, and it was all, United Colors of Bennington, if you remember those 90s ads, when kids were putting up the guests. Who's that hot blonde chick? It was kind of like a Marilyn Monroe ripoff. Anna Nicole Smith, something like. I remember those guest ads were hugely popular. Like if you want to make some kind of nonsense like that, just a ElfQuest version of Lord of the Rings, and you wouldn't have to pay for the rights. Why don't you just start fresh? Like, because literally no one would buy it if you see like, oh hey, we've got Afro Hobbits and Afro Elves. Yeah, but we're gonna call it, I don't know, Battle of the Realms or something stupid. Battle Among the Stars, if you remember that Mystery Science Theater version. Nobody's going to watch it because they're going to ask you obvious question like, yeah, so why are these different people all together in one group of people, one tribe? That just logically doesn't make sense. It's not even something like Shakespeare where you got to play, and they do this in Shakespeare, and I mean, it's stupid, but it makes more sense because in Shakespeare you got somebody playing King Lear, and you got people from around the world who are playing these characters, and that's kind of okay because he's like, you have a black guy playing a role, from King Lear or something, or Midsummer's Nights. It's like, okay, because he's playing the role. You know what I'm saying? It's like he's not. It's different when it's something like that because you got somebody who's a Shakespearean actor. They love the stories. It's like, what are you going to do? Not tell them they can't play the role? They're playing the role. They're playing a character. But they're not the character. It's not. You're not expected to think that there's a black king in Shakespeare because there's not. It's going to be whatever based on the English kings, I guess. Where Lord of the Rings is different because they're not. You're not supposed to pretend to be colorblind to them, so it all falls apart because they actually are. I don't know, unless you are supposed to. No, because that doesn't make sense, because it's just too much. It's the willing suspension of disbelief to have these like AfroHobbits and EuroHobbits all together, and you look like, so why exactly are you together, and why don't you all look like you're part of one tribe? How are we supposed to just overlook that? And they never really address that. So with Rings of Power, you're probably not watching it, and why would you? Or She-Hulk, or Andor Star Wars, or Games of the Thrones spinoff. If you're seriously watching these, then you're probably hard up for entertainment, and you're probably not familiar with the source material. Because if you are, you just go watch the source material or read the books, which just are fantastic. Hate watching these shows, I can understand as long as you're not paying for it. 1, 2, 3 and solar type of stuff. But none of them, this stuff is so bad it's good. They're just still at the so bad stage, especially She-Hulk. That's Rings of Power and She-Hulk. They're both. I mean, all the 4 things I mentioned, they're just all unwatchably bad. The funny thing about Rings of Power is that at some point in history, a certain part of the population got genocided. Same thing for Star Wars, the Andor Star Wars, which is the prequel to the New Hope. So in those universes, there was a genocide, but I don't really see a way for them to put that in the story. It's like your grandparents coming from South America. You just don't ask questions because they were, German. So, you got a lot of stuff going on in this story, but it doesn't really connect with the viewer. It doesn't really matter. It's not just not believable because they're asking you to suspend too much disbelief. The cultural Marxist in Hollywood is something new at this level. We're going to have to create a new language to discuss it, which is kind of a fascinating concept because it would mean that people. I don't know if we're exactly on the right. I don't know exactly if you have to be on the right to not be on board cultural Marxism. but it would mean that you're kind of fighting back. You're recognizing, the first step of the battle is developing the nomenclature and naming and labeling things and describing things and coming up with definitions, which is kind of the opposite of the left wing, where they can't define woman, and that's not a joke. They define it as not something that is not a man, and then man is not a woman. It's like, oh, okay, so it's a circular definition, so nothing means nothing to you guys. Like, you guys don't have a dogma because you don't want to be tied to a definition. Where, I don't know if we're exactly on the right, but the more scientifically minded want to put things in boxes and label things and define things, because you can study them and you can replicate experiments across the world and you can build from them. Where things on the left, you can't build from something, you can't use a scientific method on something where you can't replicate something. So if definitions are changing day and night, it's like, okay, you don't even want to live in a causal universe. You're not going to create anything. Like, all you're creating is propaganda. If you're changing definitions, if the ADL is changing definitions day by day, it's like, okay, well, most people are going to look at these organizations who do this kind of stuff, or the dictionary who define man as not woman, as just not being valid anymore. You have to throw the whole thing out because you realize they don't have a core dogma that they're following. They don't believe in anything other than propaganda, which is where we are now. Anyway, so what it feels like is like this is like a Russian political commissar got a hold of a story and was changing it while people were still familiar with the original. It's 1984 levels of bullshit to watch Rings of Power. People are going to think of this cultural Marxist period, this little weird window. It's weird and cringy. As the war years, kind of without a war, though, I suspect that's coming on the horizon, unfortunately, where propaganda is everywhere, but it's really cringy and lame propaganda. Because, I mean, we've got cell phones and social media. We can communicate. It's not like China, where you're limited, on their chat apps type of thing. It's like we still have a means to communicate, even in Europe, where they don't have free speech because their globalist puppet masters told them that free speech was dangerous. But you can still dog whistle concepts and ideas, where every Euro character is now African, literally in stories that Europeans created. I know cultural appropriation is just a globalist bit of propaganda, but these Bolsheviks don't even play by their own rules because they don't have any rules. It's like, how do we hate this one group of people who look like you and me, as much as possible? It's like, well, we'll just use constant appeals to emotion, which I say, like, yeah, we can refute it on appeals to emotion, but we don't control the media. The truth of the matter is they do. They control the media and social media because they have advocacy groups that can compel behavior in those. We have ADL, SPLC, ACLU, and just thousands of political advocacy groups where they can pressure social media companies and the media to do whatever they want. That's why you're looking at, like, that's actually why Elon Musk, if he buys Twitter in a few days, if that actually goes through, and it looks like it probably will, is going to be very, very interesting. The thing is, there are no rules. This is all a weapon to use against you. So what's wrong with Rings of Power? Well, it's made by people who don't love the original. They might be familiar with the original, but they don't love them, and there's a big difference there. What does it mean when you take something that has name recognition, but then you change everything that was its core dogma? It's not just a subtle thing. They're changing the core of the story. I think this is more important than it appears at first blush. This isn't just pop culture exactly. It's like those Hollywood vermin are accelerating things as fast as possible because they suspect that their time is short, as if people are going to, catch up to them and tear down their gated communities and line up to kick them in the balls or something. I don't think anything is really going to happen on the pop culture front until somebody big starts being honest about what is going on, which people use social media for, which means that they have you coming and going because they'll just kick you off social media if you're too honest about what's going on. Keep in mind, they aren't just creating new POX shows or BLT shows. Bros tried. It's like, that's actually kind of a good example because you saw what happened is he created his own show. It's like it wasn't swapping out anything. It was, it's a fresh IP of a romantic comedy type of thing. And it didn't have a whole lot of appeal because it didn't have that name recognition. But, hey, credit to him. He created something new. Nobody told him he couldn't do it. Nobody had a problem with it. It's just another, low budget comedy that came out. That it failed because the lead character, the actor and the co-writer Eichner, Billy Eichner, really unlikable guy. He's absolutely the wrong person to lead a show. Not as a lead, not as a romantic interest, not as the protagonist. He's the antagonist. He's a really unlikable, smarmy, smirky, just slimy, backstabbing type of character. You look at him and you feel instant revulsion. Like you don't want to see him in a relationship. He's not. There's nothing good about him. He's the backstabbing character that the two main characters have to fight against. So that show bombed because it didn't have any name recognition. They weren't just retelling a Disney story. Anyway, so the thing is, they're not telling these new pox stories, which would be the obvious way to do it instead of doing this what they're doing now, replacing Europeans from stories that they created. Or they'll tell historical stories and they'll blackwash actual European characters, and it's always specifically African for European. It's just that one swap. It never goes vice versa, and it's never any other group. It's like Hollywood has the throttle to the floor, but they're also in the same airplane, and when the engines blow, and they inevitably will, it's not going to be a soft landing. I mean, history tells you where this is going. A lot of them are so deep in this echo chamber that they can't see what's going on, even when something like the Martha's Vineyard pops up, and you get to see behind the curtain. You see who these people really are. Specifically with Rings of Power, they took Tolkien's story, a story based on the European experience, and removed the people who are the story, the absolute core of the story. It sends the obvious message that everything European must be replaced. But the flip side of that coin is that they're teaching the non-Europeans that their only value is as puppets in this humiliation ritual. Their stories don't have value, or else Hollywood would tell those organic stories. Now, it's not just the race swapping. It's that the narrative is that the pox people are purse puppies. They're absolutely flat, one-dimensional characters. It's that the Hollywood parasites pit all these groups against the European groups. And you can see in the past really 40 years of Hollywood, it's subtle at first, and then it becomes more and more obvious, especially with Andor, Star Wars. I mean, that's really, really on the nose. So watching this now, it's like being in Russia decades ago when the party came up with some nonsense and everyone had to politely applaud. You never want to be the last person clapping. Or they would get the gulag. But while people are going to be careful and politically correct where they're in positions they have to be because they don't want to displease the puppet masters who will destroy your life, they don't have to actually watch it. We haven't reached that level of Weimar just yet, though I suspect it's on the way, where they can monitor your show watching. It's like, especially if you have a streaming service, they can say, hey, your social credit score says that you're not watching these woke shows. Mr. So-and-so. Oh, we're going to have to report that to your employer and the tax board. And like, oh, so I need to actually play the shows. And so it's got like 36% on one of the scoring sites, and it has zero buzz behind it. Games of Thrones actually has, or whatever the spinoff is called. There actually is some chatter on social media about that show, but I mean, not much, but there is a little bit. None of the other shows, all the other shows have chatter, but it's all not for the reason you want. It's not like back in the 90s or about 20 years ago, there was like Sex in the Cities and The Sopranos, and there was a bunch of shows. I think HBO was leading the way. They probably made billions off those shows. They had a bunch of those shows, and there was a lot of like energy behind it. Or even the 90s, like Friends and Seinfeld, and there were shows. Well, one, people were on the same page back then because there were fewer offerings. But even with the HBO stuff, like there was excitement behind that. And to be fair, I never saw a single one of those shows. There was a lot of energy behind that you just you're not seeing with this kind of stuff. I mean, I guess recently you saw it with the original Game of Thrones. Rings of Power has got no interest behind it. If you already paid for Amazon Video, you might watch a few episodes hoping it will stop sucking, but you'd be pissed off if you paid for it. In fact, I guess you'd probably, like, if you're going to pay for it for 1 month, you'd probably wait until all 8 episodes came out and then binge it at once. It's very much not worth paying for. And word of mouth about that gets out pretty quickly. So the whole thing is crazy to me, like if you race swap the Shakespeare characters, because it mostly looks insane. You can't mix fair and dark actors to play the part of one tribe. That doesn't make any sense. Unless, like with the Shakespeare, they're very clearly just playing a role. They're not that person, so to speak. what, or if you have like it would make more sense for these tribal groups, like if you had AfroHobbits, they all have to be one group of AfroHobbit. They all have to look like, oh yeah, we're coming from the south part of the, it's a metaphor for analogy for Earth. So it's like, yeah, they're coming from the Africa equivalent to team up, and they're all like, that's why they're dark, because of the sun. I mean, that's why humans have different skin tones, because ionizing radiation. Like, that's the only way to make the story make sense. You can't let, oh yeah, we're in the Ireland equivalent with all these other Irish or UK type of people, but we're dark and they're fair. It's like, how does that work? This just feels like Hollywood propaganda. Oh, it's because it is exactly Hollywood propaganda. My point is, like, if you put a gun to my head and say, hey, write Lord of the Rings, make it diverse. It's like, okay, fine, that's how I would do it. The elves would come from a different tribe of elves, the Afro elves, and they'd come to team up with the Euro elves to fight the common enemy. But they don't all live together. It just doesn't make any sense, because as I said, people tend to drink and have sex, and it doesn't matter kind of who's around you. If you're living together with people and you get along with them, and you're gonna drink, you're gonna form a new tribe within a few generations, because that's what alcohol. What is it? A hard dick doesn't discriminate, or something like that. You know how that works. I mean, that's just humans evolved to form a new tribe, but it's like Hollywood is not gonna. Hollywood is Hollywood. They very much have an agenda. And they're parasites, as I've said that many, many times. And I will keep saying that until I'm shown the door from YouTube. So watching this kind of stuff, I keep waiting for people to awaken and say that this isn't acceptable. But, of course, the mainstream media is parasites, or demon people, or any other kind of euphemism you want to use. So a guy at the CNET article, he does an analysis of the show, each episode, that everything is not in accordance with the lore and what is in accordance with the lore. Or with the book, except that he says he doesn't discuss the removal of the European people from the story. He just says, of course they should be in the story. It's like, that's not an argument. Why exactly do you think it's acceptable to remove the people from the stories? They go. Oh, we're going to tell Henry Rider Haggard's Central African stories. Yeah, oh, cool. That guy really found a way to treat everyone, to elevate everyone in those stories. Like his writing for, like 150, 200 years ago was genius. He told excellent stories, and he made everyone look good and everyone look bad. Didn't matter where you're from. Oh yeah, okay, we're gonna tell that story. Not the Jewel of the Nile, but I don't know what the first one was, where they go find the diamonds. And we're gonna put a bunch of Swedish people play the African characters. Okay. Why would you do that? Because, I mean, these people are like the equivalent of just smearing dirt on walls, and it's like, this is modern art. This is look, it's a urinal on a wall. Is it Marcel Duchamp or something? Or this is not a pipe. It's like, this is just cringy and stupid. No, it's stunning and brave. No, it's cringy and stupid. This is like a lot of art. There's some good modern art, but a lot of this is, hey, I put a cross in apple juice, and I called it Piss Christ. Oh, how stunning and brave. Why don't you do that to the other two Abrahamic religions? How dare you, sir? Yeah, that's why it's cringy, because you're not doing this the other way. That's why all this is cringy. The comedian gets on stage. I remember Norm Macdonald was ripping this guy a new a-hole. This comedian gets on stage and is telling like Christian jokes in like current year, or equivalent, very close to it. And Norm's going like, what are you doing? This is modern year. You live in a free society. Of course you can make fun of Christians. Why don't you let's talk about some other groups? Oh, because I'd get in trouble. Yeah, that's the point. That's why it's not funny, because you can talk about Christians and nothing will happen. You can talk about Trump or European people, nothing will happen. Talk about some other groups if you got some balls. To be fair, who's that guy? That one comedian, Larry David, I think? One guy had the balls to joke about the Epstein-Weinstein stuff. Larry David. That was credit to him for that, man. It was funny, but it's also like, whoa. Those are some serious levels of respect for that kind of stuff. Anyway, so no, it's not acceptable to remove European people from the stories. Are European lives matter? Do white lives matter? Yes, of course, they matter very, very much. More so to us than to other people, as it seems, with Kanye and Candace triggering people at a fashion show. And it's funny. It's like, if that's what it takes to get the normie boomers on board with saying, oh, our lives do matter. Yeah, maybe we should have some in-group preferences and like advocate it to advance our own interests. Yeah, maybe we should do that. It's like you saw the triggering with Candace Owens and Kanye West, who kind of they're apparently now the leader of the white people. They're now the leader of the white nationalist ethno state. Has got these two free thinking folks for themselves. It's like I wonder what will come from this. You know, from small acorns, giant trees grown. Anyway, so you literally got tribes of people who don't belong together, and people hear that and they get so triggered. They think, "Hey, boy, this is Tolkien country. Get on out of here, Mr. Smollett. We're gonna launder your clothes for you, sir." Oh, so I'm a gay Jewish actor on a black show, or a half black, half Jewish gay actor. So it's like 3 hits for the crowd who would not be into that. Yeah, Chicago, a black show, Empire. Yeah. So these two guys, they watch the show. That's like it's a show that they watch, and this is Tolkien country, and yeah, wait. So it's Empire. It's a black show, and you're a gay black Jewish actor, who these guys presumably they're the Hugo Boss types or whatever stereotype you want to say for them, because they're white. You can say anything you want for them. So they don't like you because you insult, you're like a C-list celebrity, which is it's fine. I mean, there's a ton of those people on social media who insult Trump. It's like, yeah, everyone did that. That's what it's not. It's like it doesn't get any attention. It's like, oh, we're gonna make fun of Christians again. Okay, great. So they watched the black show Empire, which I'm sure is great. And I'm sure Smollett did a fine job in it. And then they tracked you down because you're a C-list celebrity getting a sandwich, and like that doesn't make any sense. Why would they watch the show? Because I insult Trump. Yeah, but nobody in that sphere, right-wing sphere, knows who you are. Like the identitarian cliche straw man, these histophobic guys who, turn out to be two black bodybuilders. They don't know who you are. And like, you're these 3 things that, allegedly they wouldn't want to be into, but they know who you are and they track you down. That doesn't make any sense. Even the woman doing the interview, and she was black too, is going, like, the thought bubble above her head was, this ninja is in some trouble because he is high on his own supply if he believes this narrative. So get on out of here, boy. This is Tolkien country, sir. This doesn't make any sense. It's kind of a low-res image, but you got people. Oddly enough, you don't have any East Asians in the show. I don't believe you have any like recognizably Korean, Japanese, Chinese people in the show. You got African, Euro, some Middle Eastern, but that's as far east as they go. And they're all together, and you look at them like, oh, they didn't show I don't know if they showed the kids. I wasn't watching closely enough, I have to admit, of the dwarf kings and queens. He's red-haired European, she's African. So they're kids. It's like they didn't. I think they were wearing helmets so they could keep from showing the kids who would obviously look African. So why are they together? I mean, none of this makes sense. Why? So in a few generations, all the dwarves are going to be African because that's how the genetics work. Oh, yeah, you're getting rid of something rare and precious. Blonde hair and red hair is the most rare, beautiful, precious thing on earth, and you're effectively genociding those people digitally. Did I say that word too many times for the YouTube algorithm? I suspect this is not going to get monetized. I said a lot of hot words, but I said them at the end of the video. Oh, you must just hate these people. Yeah, that's the only possible explanation. As we've said many times, just write something new. Like with Bros. It's a BLT comedy. But I mean, it's a bomb, but it's like the concept of it didn't bother people. Just write your own thing. Just make something new. Don't take something somebody already wrote and then swap it out to make some propaganda, because that's literally the definition of propaganda. You can't get around this and say this isn't propaganda where it very clearly is. Anyway, the thing is, we have a fundamental disconnect with these people because the tribes are important to us. Family is important to us. We have a different worldview because these are communist parasites, obviously, and we are, I guess, tribal nationalists. I'm not exactly sure the phrase for it. You guys are Hugo Boss. That doesn't make sense because we're all coming from different tribes, but we all still believe in it, the concept. Everything globalists value is poison. The core for us is the family, the tribe, the kingdom, the blood connection. Globalism is a religious belief pushed by demons to destroy everything that works. They carry out this mission by seizing control of the teachers' unions, schools, colleges, and the media, and they focus on brainwashing the kids, which they've been very, very effective at Anyway, I think this has gone on long enough. Like, comment, subscribe, check them out, subscribe, star, and I'll see you guys next episode.